Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're zeroing in on something pretty fundamental, I think, for anyone looking to truly connect with an audience.
Hmm.
Yeah, the art and science of surveys. We've got some sharp insights here from cognitive market research, and, well, our mission today is really to equip you with a practical understanding.
Right.
How to craft and use surveys that actually yield real gold. Think of it like unlocking a direct line to the thoughts and feelings that really matter for what you do.
Exactly. In today's world, we're just swimming in data, aren't we? But getting that direct, unfiltered feedback straight from the source, that's incredibly powerful.
Totally agree.
Whether you're trying to, say, refine an existing product, maybe boost customer loyalty, or just get a clear picture of how people see your work,
Hmm.
um, well-designed surveys are key.
Yeah.
They help you cut through all the assumptions and get to what really resonates.
Okay, so let's unpack this then. When it comes to surveys, where do we even begin? It can feel a bit overwhelming. It's not just about throwing questions out there and hoping something sticks, right?
Oh, definitely not.
Our source material really emphasizes starting with a clear purpose. That seems foundational.
Absolutely, 100%. A survey without a well-defined goal. It's like setting sail without knowing your destination. You'll just drift.
Right.
Cognitive market research highlights 5 sort of core reasons why you might conduct a survey. And getting a handle on these is really the bedrock of a successful effort.
Okay, all right. Lay those crucial goals on us. What are we actually trying to achieve when we decide, okay, let's do a survey?
Well, first up is market research. This is all about getting under the skin of your potential or existing customers. Understanding their needs, what drives them, their habits, all in relation to what you offer.
Right.
Think about a company like Netflix, maybe. They're constantly using surveys, likely, to understand subscriber preferences, what shows people are binging, what they wish they had. This helps enhance recommendations, decide on new content.
Right, so it shapes what they actually produce and
Mhm.
suggest.
Exactly. And often, the most valuable market research surveys uncover these latent needs, things customers don't even realize they want until you sort of present it to them.
That's a fascinating point. Yeah, not just asking the obvious questions, but digging for those unmet desires. Okay, what's the next critical goal then?
The second one is customer satisfaction. This one's pretty straightforward, I think.
Yeah, sounds like it.
It's about gauging how happy your current customers are with what you're providing.
Yeah.
Are they thrilled? Just
Yeah.
okay?
Yeah.
Or are there some real pain points?
Yeah.
This feedback is just vital for keeping those customers coming back.
Right, because keeping an existing customer happy is often, well, a lot easier and cheaper than winning over a brand new one. Makes sense. What about looking inward, inside the organization?
Good question. That brings us neatly to the third goal, employee engagement. Surveys aren't just for the outside world.
Sure.
Finding out how engaged and satisfied your own team is can have this huge ripple effect on productivity, on retention.
Yeah, definitely.
And as we all know, happy, engaged employees often translate directly to a better experience for your customers, too.
Such a crucial link, and sometimes it does get overlooked, doesn't it? Okay, so that's 3. What's the 4th piece of this puzzle?
The fourth goal is understanding brand perception. So how does your target audience actually see your company or your brand?
Mm-hmm.
Does that perception line up with the image you're consciously trying to project? Surveys can reveal any gaps there, maybe misunderstandings, and help you refine your whole branding strategy.
Interesting. So it's about understanding the story your audience tells themselves about who you are, essentially.
Okay. And the final fundamental goal. Finally, number 5, there's product feedback. This is where you really zoom in on your actual offerings, maybe the specific features, how easy they are to use, the overall experience.
Gotcha.
Think about, like, Apple, maybe, before a big iOS update.
Yeah.
They likely use surveys with beta testers to get feedback on new features, what's working, what's confusing, what needs tweaking.
Yeah.
This direct input is just invaluable for continuous improvement.
That's a really smart way to make sure you're building what people actually need and, want to use. Okay, so we've nailed down our why, the goals. What comes next in actually creating a survey that delivers useful info?
Right. Once you have that clear purpose locked in, you need to put on your sort of design hat and think about how to construct the survey itself.
Okay.
Cognitive market research really emphasizes that a well-crafted survey needs to be clear, concise, and maybe even a little engaging if possible.
Right, because if it's confusing or way too long or just plain boring.
Exactly. You're going to see drop-off rates skyrocket. People just won't finish it. And the quality of the responses you do get will likely suffer too.
Absolutely. Nobody wants to feel like they're slogging through some tedious questionnaire. So What are some of the fundamental elements of good survey design we should keep in mind?
Well, a really critical first step, maybe the most critical, is pinpointing your target audience. Who are you actually trying to reach with this thing?
Right. Who needs to answer this?
It's exactly. Understanding their demographics, things like, age, gender,
Mm.
income level, where they live, maybe even what they do for a living. This will directly influence the kind of questions you ask and how you frame them.
Okay.
Tailoring your survey to the right people ensures you're getting feedback from those whose opinions truly matter for achieving your goals. So, like if I'm selling high-end artisanal coffee beans,
Yeah.
I'd want to target coffee enthusiasts, people who really care about coffee, not necessarily someone who just drinks instant coffee once a week.
Yeah.
Their feedback wouldn't be as relevant.
Exactly. That laser focus seems key to getting relevant insights, not just noise. Now, once we know who we're talking to, we need to decide uh, what kind of questions we're going to ask them. It's not just a free-for-all, is it? You mentioned tools earlier. There's a range of question types.
That's right, yeah. It's like having a specialized set of tools in your survey toolkit. One of the most common is the multiple choice question. You see these everywhere. They're fantastic for gathering quantitative data because, well, respondents just select from a predefined set of answers. Makes the results really easy to count up and analyze for trends. Quick and efficient.
So that would be something like, which of these social media platforms do you use most often? And then you list Facebook, Instagram, X, etc.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Exactly like that. Then you have Likert scales.
Yes, the agree-disagree ones.
That's them. They are brilliant for measuring attitudes and opinions.
Yeah.
You've definitely seen them. Statements followed by a scale ranging from something like strongly agree all the way to strongly disagree.
Uh-huh.
When using these, it's generally good practice to have a balanced scale, maybe an odd number of points, so there's a neutral middle option, to avoid skewing the results.
Okay.
Also, something to be aware of is acquiescence bias.
Mm.
Some people just tend to agree with statements regardless of their actual opinions, so wording is key.
Interesting point. Good to keep in mind. Those Likert scales seem really useful for getting a sense of people's overall feelings about something. What other tools are in our kit?
Well, open-ended questions are your go-to for collecting that rich, qualitative data. The why behind the numbers.
Right.
These allow respondents to answer totally in their own words, giving you insights you might not have even thought to ask about. Unexpected stuff.
Okay, but there's a catch.
The catch, yes, is that you need to be prepared. Analyzing these narrative, free text responses take significantly more time and effort to sift through and identify the recurring themes. It's not just counting.
Right, because you're dealing with individual perspectives, maybe complex sentences, rather than just tallying up preset answers. What about when we just want people to rate something specific, like on a scale?
That's exactly where rating scales come into play. These ask respondents to evaluate a particular feature or maybe an experience, usually on a numerical scale, like 1 to 5 or maybe 1 to 10.
Simple enough.
Yeah. For instance, on a scale of 1 to 5, where 5 is highly satisfied, how satisfied were you with the speed of our delivery? They're very straightforward for getting a quick measure of satisfaction or perceived quality on specific items.
Simple and direct. Okay. And the last key question type you mentioned.
That would be dichotomous questions. Sounds fancy, but it just means
Yes or no?
exactly. Your clear-cut yes, no, or true-false options. They're super quick for respondents to answer, and they provide binary data, just 2 choices. Very useful for things like screening questions or simple preferences.
So listening to all that, it really sounds like the best approach is usually going to be using a mix of these different question types, not just relying on one.
Exactly right. Cognitive market research definitely highlights that a combination is generally the most effective strategy.
Okay.
You might lean heavily on multiple choice and Likert scales for your primary quantitative analysis, the numbers, but then you strategically weave in some open-ended questions to add that crucial depth and maybe uncover those unexpected insights that the numbers alone won't show you.
Got it. Build a balanced survey.
Okay.
Okay, so our survey is beautifully crafted. The questions are perfect. It's targeted. Now, how do we actually get it out there? How do we get it in front of our target audience? What are the different avenues for survey distribution?
Distribution. Yeah, a critical step. If nobody sees it, it doesn't matter how good it is.
True.
There are several methods, and each has its own pros and cons, its own best use cases. Email surveys are a real workhorse, I'd say.
Okay.
Particularly useful for reaching existing customers or maybe your employees, people you already have contact information for.
Right.
The key here, though, is a compelling subject line, something that grabs attention in a crowded inbox. Then a clear call to action inside the email so people know exactly what you want them to do. Click here, take the survey.
Makes sense.
And sometimes offering a small incentive like a discount on their next purchase or entry into a prize draw can boost response rates.
But
You have to be a bit careful. Just be mindful of whether that incentive might somehow bias the responses you get. Are people answering honestly or just rushing through for the reward?
that's a really good point about incentives. Yeah, you want genuine feedback, not just, people clicking boxes to get a coupon. What about reaching a broader net of people, maybe folks who aren't on our email list yet?
For a wider reach, social media platforms are incredibly powerful tools these days. You can share survey links organically, just posting them on your profiles on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, X, wherever your audience hangs out.
Okay, just put it out there.
Yeah, or, and this is where it gets really interesting, if you have a very specific demographic in mind, you can use paid social media ads.
Ah, targeting.
Exactly. To target those individuals directly based on their interests, their location, their job titles, all sorts of things depending on the platform.
So you can really fine-tune who sees your survey based on their online profiles and behaviors. That's powerful. What if people are already on our website or using our app? Can we catch them there?
Absolutely, that's a prime opportunity. You can use website or landing page embedding. If someone is already visiting your site, they're showing some level of interest, right?
Uh-huh.
So a well-placed, maybe concise survey popping up or embedded on a page can capture their feedback right in the moment. Similarly, in-app or on-site surveys are fantastic for gathering feedback immediately after a specific interaction.
Like after they buy something.
Exactly, like right after someone completes a purchase in your app or uses a specific feature. Asking then means their recall is fresh, and the feedback can be really specific and valuable.
Getting feedback right at that point of interaction makes a ton of sense. Freshest impressions. Are there still situations where maybe more traditional methods are useful, like picking up the phone?
Absolutely. For more personalized or really in-depth feedback, telephone or even in-person surveys can still be very effective.
Okay.
Now, they definitely require more time and resources paying interviewers, scheduling calls or meetings.
Yeah, sounds like it.
But they allow for a much richer, more nuanced conversation. You can probe deeper, ask follow-up questions based on their answers. They can be particularly useful for understanding really complex issues or sensitive topics, where that human touch helps.
So, a whole range of options, really, depending on who we want to reach, how deep we want to go, and maybe our budget too. Okay, so the responses start coming in, hopefully lots of them. That's when the real work of analyzing survey results begins, right? How do we actually make sense of all that data?
Yeah, this is where you transform that raw data into meaningful, actionable insights. It's crucial. For the quantitative data, those responses from multiple choice, rating scales, Likert scale,
Better numbers stuff.
the number of stuff, exactly. You'll be looking for patterns, calculating averages, maybe frequencies, and visualizing the data. Using charts and graphs like pie charts or bar graphs really helps you quickly see the overall trends.
Okay.
You might notice, for instance, that, say, 80% of respondents chose a particular answer, or that the average satisfaction score is 4.1 out of 5. But it's important here not just to look at averages.
What else?
Look for correlations too. Are certain answers linked to other factors you asked about? Like, do younger respondents answer differently than older ones on a key question? Don't just focus on the overall average. Slice the data a bit.
So it's about seeing both the big picture, the broad strokes, and also those potential connections or differences within the data.
Got it. What about dealing with those open-ended, qualitative responses, the written answers?
Right. Qualitative data analysis takes a different approach. It's less about math, more about interpretation. You'll typically start by just reading through the responses, immersing yourself in them.
Okay.
And as you read, you start identifying recurring themes, keywords, or sentiments. Are people mentioning price a lot? Or customer service? Is the tone generally positive or negative?
Right, yeah.
Text analysis software can actually be a great help here, especially with large volumes. It can automatically flag frequently used words or phrases, maybe even sentiment.
Oh, interesting. But often, you'll still need to do some manual review as well to really understand the nuances and maybe uncover more subtle but significant insights that software might miss, things that didn't fit into neat, predefined categories. It's a bit like detective work, honestly.
Yeah, it sounds like the qualitative side can really reveal the why behind the what that we see in the numbers, the context. What's the next layer of analysis we should think about?
Segmenting your data is a really powerful technique. We touched on it with correlations, but this is more formal.
Okay, tell me more.
This involves deliberately breaking down your respondents into smaller, distinct groups based on shared characteristics. Could be demographics like age or location, or behaviors like how often they purchase, or maybe their preferences like which product version they use.
Right.
For example, you could compare the satisfaction levels of different age groups, or look specifically at how first-time customers responded versus your long-term repeat customers. This allows you to see if different segments of your audience have distinctly different needs, opinions, or experiences. A one-size-fits-all analysis can sometimes hide these really important differences that you need to know about.
That makes perfect sense. Yeah, you might find that one particular group is really enthusiastic about a certain feature, while another group is completely indifferent or even dislikes it. And the ultimate goal, the whole point of all this digging and slicing and dicing the data.
It's all about identifying actionable insights. That's the end game. The whole reason you conducted the survey in the first place was to inform your decisions, right? To make things better.
Exactly.
So if your analysis reveals that, say, a significant number of customers are struggling with a particular step in your checkout process, well, that's a clear signal. That's an actionable insight telling you to prioritize improvements in that specific area.
Okay.
Conversely, if you see consistently high ratings and glowing comments about your customer support team, that's also actionable. It tells you that's a strength you can highlight in your marketing, maybe even invest more in.
Right.
Actionable data is information that directly points to specific changes or actions you can take. It's not just interesting. It leads somewhere, like tweaking a product feature, adjusting your marketing message, maybe changing a process, all based on clear patterns in the feedback.
So it's really about translating those data points, those numbers and comments into tangible steps that can actually improve what you do. That's key. Now, the article also delves into the types of specific questions we should consider asking. Beyond the format, what content areas should we cover?
Yeah, good point. Cognitive market research emphasizes the importance of including both demographic and behavioral questions, generally speaking.
Okay.
Demographic questions, as we touched on, help you paint that picture of who your audience is. For consumer surveys, this might include things like age, gender, maybe income range, marital status, education level,
Yeah.
even things like home ownership or ethnicity, depending on what's relevant.
Uh-huh.
For business-to-business surveys, you'd be looking at things more like industry, company size, maybe annual revenue, or the number of employees, job titles.
That gives you that basic framework, that context of who you're actually hearing from.
Mhm.
But demographics alone don't tell the whole story, do they? They don't tell you why people do things.
Not at all. That's where behavioral questions come in. These dig much deeper into their values, their motivations, and their actual behaviors related to your product, your service, or your industry.
Okay.
This stuff is absolutely crucial for understanding their decision-making process and what truly drives them, what makes them tick.
Right.
So, for example, you might ask questions like, who in their household typically makes the purchasing decisions for this type of product? Or what competitor products have they used or considered? Where do they typically shop, mostly online or in physical stores?
Hmm.
How often do they actually use your product or service? How do they research products before buying? Do they rely on online reviews, social media recommendations, expert articles, just search engines?
Lots of angles there.
Yeah, and also, what are their biggest challenges or frustrations related to the problem your product solves? What are their goals? What specific features or benefits do they value most? Is it primarily price? Or is it quality, convenience, customer service? You can even ask directly about their satisfaction level with their current solutions or providers.
Wow, those behavioral questions really seem to get to the core of their needs, their preferences, their whole journey. That feels incredibly valuable. Okay, and finally, a question that's probably on, well, everyone's mind when they think about doing a survey. How many do we actually need? How many responses do we need to get results we can actually trust? How do we figure out the right number of surveys?
Yeah, that's a super common and important question. It really boils down to making sure your results are statistically significant.
Okay, what does that mean exactly?
It essentially means that the results you see in your sample of respondents are likely to accurately reflect the opinions or characteristics of the larger group you're actually interested in understanding. Your findings aren't just due to random chance because your sample was too small or unrepresentative.
Gotcha. So how do we ensure that?
Well, cognitive market research outlines a few key factors you need to consider. First, you have to clearly define your target population. That's the entire group of individuals you want to draw conclusions about.
Right.
So, is it all dog owners in the UK? Or is it just customers who bought a specific brand of dog food from your website in the last 6 months? Those are vastly different populations.
Okay, size matters.
Size matters, and specificity matters. Generally, a larger target population will require more responses to be representative.
That makes sense. The broader the group, the more people you need to survey to get a good cross-section. What else plays a role?
Second is your desired confidence level and margin of error. These sound a bit technical, but they're pretty intuitive concepts.
Okay, break it down for us.
The confidence level tells you how sure you can be that your sample results reflect the true population. A common standard is 95% confidence. That means if you repeated the survey 100 times, you'd expect the results to be within a certain range of the true population value 95 times out of 100.
Okay, 95% sounds pretty standard. And the margin of error?
The margin of error indicates how much your survey results might differ from the actual population value. It's usually expressed as a plus or minus percentage. Common margins of error are maybe plus minus 5% or sometimes plus minus 3%.
So if 60% of my sample says yes and my margin of error is 5%.
Then you can be, say, 95% confident that the true percentage of the whole population who would say yes is somewhere between 55%, 60 minus 5, and 65%, 60 plus 5.
Right.
Now, if you want a smaller margin of error, meaning more precision, a tighter range, you're going to need a larger sample size. Getting down to plus minus 3% requires significantly more responses than plus minus 5%.
Okay, so the tighter you want that range of acceptable error to be, the more data, the more responses you need to collect. Makes sense. And is there a third factor?
There is. The third factor involves the type of survey and the characteristics of your specific population. For instance, if you're surveying a very niche, highly engaged group, maybe members of a professional organization about their field, they might have a really high response rate.
Okay.
In that case, you might need to send out fewer initial surveys to reach your target number of responses. However, if you're dealing with a very broad market, or maybe a population that's harder to reach or less likely to respond.
Like the general public on a random topic.
Exactly. You'll need to send out significantly more surveys just to account for all the non-responses and still end up with a statistically significant final sample size.
Right. You have to factor in that not everyone will reply.
Precisely. And luckily, you don't always have to guess. There are statistical formulas and lots of free online calculators that can help you determine an appropriate sample size based on your population size, your desired confidence level, and your margin of error.
Ah, okay. So there are tools to help with the math part. It sounds like there's definitely a bit of science involved in finding that sweet spot for sample size.
There is, absolutely.
Yeah.
But understanding these core principles, population, confidence, margin of error, expected response rate, will guide you in making much more informed decisions about how many responses you actually need to collect to get trustworthy results.
Well, this has been a truly illuminating deep dive into the world of surveys. Honestly, it's so much more than just asking a few questions off the top of your head. It really is a strategic tool for gaining a real, nuanced understanding of your audience.
Absolutely. And when you do it right, when you carefully consider your goals, craft thoughtful questions, choose the right distribution methods, and then rigorously analyze the results, you can unlock incredibly valuable insights.
Yeah.
Insights that will directly impact your products, your services, your communication, your overall success in connecting with your audience, really.
So, reflecting on everything we've discussed today, from defining those crucial survey goals right at the start, to the nuts and bolts of question design, the different ways to get surveys out there, and the power of really digging into the analysis, what's maybe one area of your current understanding that you personally feel inspired to explore more deeply now, using this kind of targeted surveying approach?
Ooh, that's a great question to turn back on us. Um, Thinking about it, I think I'd be particularly interested in exploring more advanced techniques for analyzing those open-ended qualitative responses.
The text stuff.
Yeah, trying to see if we can use maybe more sophisticated text analysis or even some AI tools to extract even richer, more nuanced understandings of people's underlying motivations and needs from their own words, going beyond just keyword counting.
That sounds fascinating. And for you, our listener, we really hope this deep dive has given you a robust foundation for understanding and, more importantly, effectively using surveys. As our insights from cognitive market research highlight, this really is a powerful pathway.
It really is.
A pathway to tailoring what you offer and forging much stronger connections with the people you serve. We definitely encourage you to maybe explore some specific survey platforms out there or look into statistical analysis tools if you're keen to delve even further into this fascinating and, frankly, really valuable area.
Definitely worth the effort.
Thanks so much for joining us on The Deep Dive.